In this video, we're going to look at the basic geometry terms unit, in which we talk about collinear, non-collinear, coplanar, names of lines, also distance formula and midpoint formula. So here we go. Name a point collinear to point R on this diagram over here. Well, we have two different options. R is on the same line as S and T, so you could either choose one of those two. Give another name for line B. Line B is this line right here that travels through here. So we could either say VS, we could say SW, we could say VW. And again, you could say each of those backwards. Name a point non-coplanar to point U. So we're looking at a point that is not on the same plane, not on the same piece of paper as U. Well, that we have two options there. It's either going to be V or W. Alright, next question. They're asking us to name the intersection of planes JKLMN and HMLG. JKLMN is this plane right here on the back of the prism, and HMLG is right here. Now you can see where those two intersect. It's not just a single point, it is a segment, and it's the segment ML. They want to know a point that's coplanar to F and K. Well, F and K are right here. You have actually four choices. Now, this line segment right here lies on both this plane up here and this plane down here. So if you're looking at FKJE, you could say J or E are coplanar. If you're looking at FKLG, you could say L and G are coplanar. Next question, name a point non-coplanar to point L. Well, we're looking non-coplanar here. L is on this bottom plane. It's also on this plane right here, and it's also on the plane right here. So if you're looking for points that are non-coplanar, you actually have three choices. You have J, E, or D. Now let's take a peek at our distance formula and midpoint formula. Our distance formula is actually a lengthy version of the Pythagorean theorem. Alright, and the midpoint formula, remember it's a point. So essentially what you're doing is finding the average, the middle of the 2 points. So you're taking your x1 plus x2 and you're dividing it by 2. Then you're going to take your y1 plus your y2 and divide it by 2. So the first question they're asking us here is they're giving us line segment AB with endpoints -1, 7, and 11, -1. Let's go ahead and label that x, y, x, and y. And again, I'm going to use 1 and 2, our sub numbers there. Oops, sorry. 1 and 1, 2 and 2. Alright. So they want us to know the length, which means we're going to use the distance formula. Now, if you're not in my class, you might not understand where I'm going with this, but I do this a little bit differently. So the first thing I do is I subtract my x's. Okay, so what I'm going to do is my x's are 11 minus -1. Or I'm going to go 11 now. -1 minus 11. That's going to give me -12. However, I can ignore, in this case, the negative. And there's a reason for that. When I actually square that, it gets rid of the negative anyways. So to not create confusion, to get rid of confusion, we're just going to take away the negative with the 12 and call it 12. Next thing I do here is subtract my y's. And I'm going to do that by doing 7 minus -1. Don't forget about the negative sign and the minus. It's going to give me 8. Okay, the next step is I'm going to square both numbers and add them. So I have 12 squared plus 8 squared. It would be 144 plus 64. It's going to give me 208. And the last step I do, again, is the square root part. I take the square root of answer. So my answer is square root of 208. If it comes out to be a whole number, you can do that and simplify it. In this case, square root of 208 will not come out to be a whole number. It will come out to be simplified, but we can leave it at that for now. All right, midpoint. Midpoint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my x's. And I'm going to divide it by 2. And I'm also going to add my y's. And I'm going to divide those by 2. So first, let's take a peek at our x's. I have negative 1 plus 11, and I'm going to divide that by 2. And I have my y's, 7 plus negative 1, and I'm going to divide that by 2. It doesn't always have to come out to be a nice whole number. Negative 1 plus 11 is 10 divided by 2. 7 plus negative 1 is 6 divided by 2. Keeping in mind all the time that this is a point, so we need two values. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 6 divided by 2 is 3. That is our midpoint. Let's take a peek at this one. A segment has a midpoint of 2, negative 7, and an endpoint of 8, negative 5. And we want to know what the other endpoint is. So let's go ahead and throw that midpoint here, 2, negative 7. My endpoint is 8, negative 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my x's first. I'm going to figure out how far is it from 8 to 2. I subtract those numbers to do that. And they're 6 units apart. Now, if I'm going from 8 to 2, that means I'm going down 2. I'm going backward 2 on the number line. So I have to then go to take away my 6. And that's going to be negative 4. So my x value here is going to be negative 4. To find my y value, I'm going to look at my distance between my y values. So I have negative 5, take away negative 7. I know that those are 2 units apart. Again, I'm going from negative 5 to negative 7. That's going backward on the number line. I'm subtracting. So I'm actually going to take negative 7 and I'm going to take away 2. And that's going to get me negative 9. My other endpoint would be negative 4, negative 9. In this last problem, they're telling us x is the midpoint, so I'm going to write that, of w, y, and when I say the midpoint, I know that those two are congruent right there. Wx, 3x minus 1, and wy, this whole thing right here, is going to be 10x minus 26. Alright, here's the problem though. I know that when I add these two segments, it equals the entire thing. I know that segment, which means since this is congruent, I know that's also 3x minus 1. So let's set it up by adding those two together, and it's going to equal the entire thing. 3x minus 1 plus 3x minus 1 equals 10x minus 26. What I'm going to do first is look what I can combine. 3x and 3x, 6x, negative 1 minus 1, negative 2. Now again, you can start this next step either way. I'm going to add 26 here. That gets rid of that. I have 6x plus 24 equals 10x. Now I have to bring my x over here. I'm going to minus 6x, which in turn gets rid of that. So I have 24 equals 4x divided by 4. And I have x equals 6. We'll squeeze that over there. However, let's keep in mind they want us to find xy. Xy is this chunk right there. So what I'm going to do is take my 6 and substitute it into that. So I'm going to say 3 times 6 minus 1. That's going to get me 17. The distance of xy is 17. That's going to be my answer.